Let's be honest, when it comes to horror, Hollywood gets all the attention, but some of the most disturbing, unforgettable supernatural movies ever made actually come from Europe. These aren't just ghost stories with a different accent. These are films that dig deep into your psyche, twist your expectations, and leave you genuinely unsettled long after the credits roll. Today, I'm breaking down 8 European horror movies that are not only packed with ghosts, demons, and black magic, but are also widely considered scarier than anything American studios have put out. For each film, I'll explain the supernatural threat, what makes it so effective, and give you tangible proof, awards, critical acclaim, or cultural impact that these movies are the real deal. If you love discovering international horror gems, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive into the world's scariest cinema. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the last movie on this list. It's so disturbing. It's been called one of the most traumatizing films ever made. Wreck, Spain, 2007. Wreck is the kind of movie that grabs you by the throat and never lets go. What starts as a routine night for a TV reporter and her cameraman quickly turns into a claustrophobic nightmare when a mysterious infection breaks out in a Barcelona apartment building. The infection spreads with terrifying speed, and the authorities seal the building, trapping everyone inside. At first, it seems like a zombie outbreak, but as the survivors are picked off one by one, it becomes clear that the true evil is demonic possession. The final act, set in a pitch-black attic, is pure nightmare fuel, one of the most terrifying sequences in modern horror. Re-C is relentless, raw, and genuinely terrifying. It holds an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, won Best Film at the Sitges Film Festival, and is often cited by critics as one of the best horror films of the 2000s. Even Stephen King called it absolutely terrifying. The movie's influence is so strong that it spawned 3 sequels and a wave of copycats, but none match the original's raw terror. What makes Wreck so effective is its use of found footage, which creates a sense of immediacy and realism. The camera never looks away, forcing the audience to experience every moment of terror alongside the characters. The demonic twist in the final act, where the infection is revealed to be the result of a Vatican experiment gone wrong, adds a layer of religious horror that elevates the film above standard zombie fare. The sense of isolation, the relentless pacing, and the sheer unpredictability of the evil make Wreck a masterclass in supernatural horror. The Orphanage, Spain, 2007. The Orphanage is a masterclass in ghost storytelling, produced by Guillermo del Toro. Laura returns to the orphanage where she grew up, hoping to reopen it as a home for children with disabilities. But her son, Simon, begins communicating with invisible friends and soon disappears. The supernatural threat is a group of child ghosts, but the absolute horror is the emotional devastation that comes with uncovering their tragic past. Laura's search for her son leads her to discover that the ghosts are the spirits of children who were murdered in the orphanage decades earlier. The film's atmosphere is thick with dread, and the scares are rooted in grief and loss, not cheap tricks. The final reveal is both heartbreaking and chilling, making you question what you'd do in Laura's place. With an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes and praise from Stephen King, The Orphanage is considered a modern classic. It swept Spain's Goya Awards, leaving audiences in tears and terror. The emotional punch of the ending lingers long after the credits roll, something few American ghost stories achieve. What sets The Orphanage apart is its ability to blend supernatural horror with real human emotion. The ghosts are not just malevolent spirits, they are lost children, victims of cruelty and neglect, seeking closure and justice. The film's use of sound, lighting, and set design creates an atmosphere of constant unease, while the performances, especially by Belén Rueda, ground the story in genuine heartbreak. The Orphanage is a reminder that the scariest ghosts are often the ones we create ourselves, through guilt, regret, and unresolved trauma. The Devil's Backbone, Spain, 2001. The Devil's Backbone is another Guillermo del Toro classic, set in a haunted orphanage during the Spanish Civil War. The ghost of a murdered boy, Santi, haunts the halls, but the real evil comes from the living: greed, betrayal, and the violence of war. The supernatural is used to explore themes of unresolved trauma and the darkness that adults bring into children's lives. Santi's ghost isn't just there for scares. He's a symbol of the orphanage's tragic history, and the violence that lingers long after death. The film's slow-burn tension and emotional depth make it far more haunting than most American ghost stories. The Devil's Backbone boasts a 92% Rotten Tomatoes score, multiple Goya Awards, and is often ranked among the best horror films of the 21st century. Del Toro himself has called it his most personal film, and it's easy to see why. The supernatural is woven seamlessly into real historical tragedy, making the horror feel both intimate and epic. The film's setting, a crumbling orphanage in the middle of a war zone, creates a sense of isolation and vulnerability that amplifies the horror. The ghost of Santi, with his cracked skull and bleeding wound, is both terrifying and tragic, a constant reminder of the violence that permeates the orphanage. The Devil's Backbone is a meditation on the nature of evil, both supernatural and human, and its impact lingers long after the credits roll. The Beyond, Italy, 1981. Lucio Fulci's The Beyond is a fever dream of supernatural horror. A woman named Lisa inherits a Louisiana hotel, only to discover it's built over one of the 7 gateways to hell. The evil beneath the hotel is ancient and unstoppable, unleashed by the lynching of a suspected warlock decades earlier. Zombies, apparitions, and reality-warping phenomena plague the hotel. The dead rise, the living are driven mad, and the boundaries between life and death dissolve. The evil is so powerful that it eventually consumes the protagonists, trapping them in a hellish limbo where escape is impossible. The Beyond's surreal, nightmarish logic and relentless supernatural violence make it feel like a bad dream from which you can't wake up. The house isn't just haunted, it's a gateway to oblivion. The film's practical effects and unhinged energy have made it a cult classic, banned in several countries for its graphic content. The ending, where the characters find themselves trapped in a desolate, otherworldly landscape, is one of the most haunting in horror. What makes The Beyond so terrifying is its refusal to explain the evil at its core. The supernatural forces at work are ancient, unknowable, and utterly indifferent to human suffering. The film's dreamlike structure, combined with its graphic violence and surreal imagery, creates a sense of disorientation and dread that few American horror films can match. The Beyond is a descent into madness, a journey through a world where the rules no longer apply and evil is absolute. Possession, France/West Germany, 1981. Possession is the movie that broke censors and left audiences traumatized. The story follows Anna, a woman whose marriage is falling apart, as she descends into madness and demonic possession. Her husband, Mark, becomes obsessed with uncovering the truth, only to find himself caught in a web of supernatural horror. The supernatural force here is never fully explained, making it even more terrifying. Anna's possession manifests in increasingly violent and bizarre ways, including the infamous subway scene, where she suffers a breakdown so intense it borders on the inhuman. The horror is both physical and psychological, with the demon using Anna's body as a battleground for its own twisted purposes. Possession holds an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, was banned in the UK as a video nasty, and is regularly cited as one of the most disturbing films ever made. Critics and fans alike have called it unwatchable in the best way possible. The film's ending, with doppelgangers and reality unraveling, is pure nightmare fuel. What makes Possession so effective is its ambiguity. The film never fully explains the nature of the demon or its motives, leaving the audience to question what is real and what is imagined. The performances, especially by Isabella Gianni, are raw and unhinged, adding to the sense of unease. Possession is a film that gets under your skin and stays there, a reminder that the most terrifying horrors are often the ones we can't understand. The House by the Cemetery, Italy, 1981. The House by the Cemetery is another Fulci classic, following the Boyle family as they move into a house with a dark secret in the basement. Dr. Freudstein, an undead demonic scientist who uses black magic to stay alive. The house is saturated with his evil, and the basement is a literal chamber of horrors. The family is tormented by apparitions, strange noises, and eventually, direct attacks from Freudstein himself. The evil is so strong that it can manipulate the environment, trap victims, and even resurrect the dead. The idea that evil can fester and grow in a house, turning it into a living entity that feeds on its inhabitants, is pure nightmare fuel. The film's surreal atmosphere and relentless dread make it a standout in the haunted house genre. The ending, where the family is trapped in a hellish dimension, is one of the most disturbing in the horror genre. The film's use of practical effects and graphic violence creates a sense of physicality that makes the horror feel real. The house itself becomes a character, a living entity that feeds on the suffering of its inhabitants. The House by the Cemetery is a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create ourselves. The Innocents, Norway, 2021. The Innocents is a chilling look at childhood evil. A group of children in a Norwegian apartment complex discover they have supernatural powers, but instead of using them for good, things take a dark turn. The evil here is subtle, growing from innocent games to acts of absolute cruelty. The film's slow pace and realistic performances make the supernatural elements feel disturbingly plausible. The children's powers escalate from telekinesis to mind control, and the line between play and violence blurs until tragedy strikes. The idea that children can be both victims and perpetrators of evil is deeply unsettling. The Innocents has a 96% Rotten Tomatoes score, was a selection at Cannes, and was described by multiple critics as the scariest movie of the year. The movie's use of daylight horror and moral ambiguity makes it a standout in modern supernatural cinema. And the final confrontation between the children is as heartbreaking as it is terrifying. What makes The Innocents so effective is its exploration of the dark side of childhood. The film refuses to offer easy answers, instead presenting a world where innocence and evil coexist, and where the line between the two is constantly shifting. The Innocents is a film that lingers in the mind, a reminder that the most terrifying monsters are often the ones we least expect. The Wicker Man, UK, 1973. The Wicker Man is the original British folk horror masterpiece. A devout Christian policeman, Sergeant Howie, visits a remote Scottish island to investigate a missing girl, only to discover the locals practice ancient pagan rituals. The supernatural threat is the island's collective belief in sacrifice and the power of their gods. The horror here is psychological and cultural. The sense of isolation, the slow build-up, and the shocking ending, where the protagonist is burned alive as a sacrifice, are far more disturbing than any American folk horror. The Wicker Man holds a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and is considered one of the greatest British films ever made. Its influence can be seen in everything from Midsommar to The Ritual. The film's final moments, with Howie praying as the flames rise and the villagers sing, are among the most haunting in cinema. What sets The Wicker Man apart is its use of atmosphere and ritual. The film builds a sense of unease through its depiction of the island's strange customs and the villagers' unwavering devotion to their gods. The horror is slow burning, creeping up on the audience until the final, unforgettable climax. The Wicker Man is a film that lingers, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying evil lies hidden behind tradition and community. So there you have it, 8 European horror movies that prove the scariest supernatural stories aren't always made in Hollywood. Whether it's demonic possession, haunted orphanages, or black magic rituals, these films dig deeper, go darker, and leave a mark that American horror rarely matches. What really sets these movies apart is their willingness to embrace ambiguity, emotional trauma, and cultural fears that go beyond simple jump scares. They're not afraid to leave you unsettled, confused, or even devastated by the end. And that's what makes them so effective and so unforgettable. Which of these European horror films freaked you out the most? Did I miss any supernatural gems that deserve a spot in part 2? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the world's scariest cinema. Remember, sometimes the most terrifying stories come from places you least expect.